Okay, so finding angles with trigonometry. What you have to do first is, start with the right triangle and you have to set up an equation. So sine, cosine, tangent of the angle equals something over something. And then the last step really is you're going to use the inverse trig function. So inverse sine, inverse cosine, inverse tangent to get rid of the sine, cosine, or tangent. And then that way you use a calculator and you should have your angle popping up right there. Okay, so in this example, what we're looking for here is we have like a mountain here, and we're trying to figure out what's the angle that each of these things are going up at. Like, what is the steepness of these things? And if you look at it, this should be a bigger angle than this, which should be a bigger angle than this, because these are getting flatter and flatter. That's steep right there, a little less steep, a little less steep. So let's figure it out. We got to do three separate situations here. We got to find x, we got to find y, and we got to find z. So in order to do that, we're going to use trig equations. So let's start with x. I'll do the x1 in black because that's what x is in. So from x, 1000 is your opposite, and 750 is your adjacent. So opposite and adjacent, that's tangent. So you're going to do tangent of x equals 1000 over 750. Which means to find x, you're going to use inverse tangent of 1000 over 750. And x is about 53.1 degrees. Cool. So this one right here, about 53.1 degrees. Now let's do angle y, the red angle here. So from y, 1700 is the opposite, and 3000 is the hypotenuse. So the one that uses opposite and hypotenuse is going to be sine. So we have sine of y equals the opposite, 1700, over the hypotenuse, 3000. And then y just equals inverse sine of 1700 over 3000, which means y is about 34.5 degrees. So 34.5 degrees for that one. And finally, the last one, which should be the lowest angle, just looking at the picture generally and thinking about this, is angle z. So from angle z, we have a hypotenuse of 4200. We have an adjacent of 3900. So the one that uses adjacent and hypotenuse, of course, is cosine. So cosine of z equals 3900 over 4200, which means z equals inverse cosine of that same exact fraction. So you get out your calculator, and you get about 21.8 degrees, which again is the lowest, and that's kind of what we expected just looking at this thing. So the biggest thing, and the real reason that I did 3 of these, is to show you when you're going to use certain ratios. So like, if you only have opposite and adjacent, tangent is the one that uses opposite and adjacent. If you only have opposite and hypotenuse, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And if you have adjacent and hypotenuse, cosine's the one that uses both of those with adjacent and hypotenuse. You couldn't use sine here yet unless you knew what the hypotenuse was, which you could get through the Pythagorean theorem, but that just adds an extra step, and using tangent is just as easy as using sine.